Hi, everyone. Welcome to Life Edge. We will be starting the show momentarily. So, are you guys ready?
Let me turn off make sure I don't have my phone on.
Oh.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay. So that's going to be, we're going to start on this shot. Intro is cued? Okay. So if you're ready, Susan, shall we start?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. So we are going to start the show recording in 3, 2, and 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Life Edge, because life just doesn't have to be mediocre. And here is our queen of non-mediocrity herself, Dr. Susan Nash. Hi, Susan. How are you?
Hello. Great. Great to be here, Rick, and we have a great guest.
Yeah, and I heard you've been having a lot of fun. You've been going around buying things and having a good time. Sounds fun.
Oh, you're talking perhaps about my real estate empire.
Yeah,
I
that's what I
recently
heard.
acquired a Fannie Mae repo on an
Wow,
auction
okay.
in Pawnee, Oklahoma.
Where's that?
It's 1 hour west of Oklahoma City and 45 minutes east of Stillwater, and it's really historic. It's really fantastic. The Pawnee Bill Ranch was there, and they had like Wild West shows and Annie Oakley back like 100 years ago, and also the Pawnee tribe has its tribal centers.
Okay.
And it's just a really cool place.
Sounds fun. Hey, let's start the show.
Very west.
Here we go. Oh, I'm sorry. And we are back. Susan, we've got a great guest today. In fact, this would be the second guest from this organization, which does very good work. You want to introduce him?
They do. Oh, they do. And I'm so thrilled to have the executive director from Dayspring Community Services. And we have Andrew Merritt. He's just wonderful. He has a lot of experience in providing community services. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And I thought I'd start out with a very quick question. For our viewers who may not be familiar with Dayspring Community Services, could you give us a little bit of background?
Sure. Dayspring Community Services is a behavioral health organization. We've been providing services in Tulsa and northeast Oklahoma primarily, and now a little bit west of there over to Oklahoma City and up to Ponca City for probably close to 20 years. We've grown and changed over those 20 years significantly, and have had a lot of fun doing it and seen some exciting things. And I would say we're a fairly innovative group, and I have a pretty creative group of leaders with me here in Oklahoma.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, I have a question too. That how did you get interested in providing community services?
Me personally, or
Yes.
Okay. I think it comes from a service perspective that was given to me by my family. My parents were missionaries, actually. I was born in Nigeria, and I think growing up I watched them function from a service perspective, always with an eye to those in need. Whether it was my mother doing ad hoc nursing in the village, to my father welcoming a neighbor in and just visiting with them about the struggles that they were having. So I think it kind of comes to me from my family of origin, I would say.
That's really interesting, and I think it's really fascinating that you were born and your first few years were spent in Nigeria. And so you have the experience of what it's like to be kind of I guess, an outsider or potentially a stranger in a strange land. How did that shape you?
I think you coined it very well, Susan. For me, often in life, I found myself being new to a group of people, being kind of a newcomer. And so, you know, all the way through my developmental years. And so, you know, we spent 15 years, I guess actually 9 for me. I was born there, and then at the age of 9, we relocated to the States and to St. Louis. And so then I had to acculturate or assimilate. Those are some of the terms that are common as far as immigrants' experience. And then I think we moved several times. We came to St. Louis and then moved to the South, and we lived in Memphis for a period of time, and then to the Midwest up to Springfield, Missouri. And so even all of those different experiences were varied in culture, so to speak. And so for me, I think my sense of who I am came into being very strongly when I started college and found an international community again, and felt very at home again, so to speak. So,
Andrew, would you say that when people travel and get to see more parts of the world, take them outside of their own little community, they benefit enormously from it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think as a child I struggled with tagging along with my parents through those changes, but as an adult, I found it to be a great strength and really a great lens through which to view things.
That's true. Yeah, for kids it's horrible. Nobody wants to move when you're a kid. Then you get used to it.
Very, very true.
What were your first experiences when what were the things that you liked to do in Nigeria? Do you remember?
Oh, wow. I was just your typical kid. I actually, given I spent my first 6 years with a tribe. I spoke the tribal dialect. I ran with the rest of the kids in the village and played the games that were common to the kids in the village. It was wonderful as to my memory. And I think my parents weren't overly protective, so I really kind of fit in with the gang there as a child. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
definitely.
And I seem to find my feet in a similar way in each new environment that I was placed in growing up. So.
I just find that really interesting, and what's coincidental is that Rick came to the United States as a young child as well. And Rick, you had some sort of similar experiences, right?
Not the same. I wasn't in a tribal situation, which is different. I was 3 years old, and my parents kidnapped me to the U.S. when they immigrated. So, but my dad was with the airlines and the freight liners, the ocean liners. So as a result, we did move New York to LA to other places. So yes, as a child, you stay several years here, 6 years there, a decade there. And of course, you miss your friends when you move and all that. But I think it builds a great adaptability.
Absolutely. I would echo that.
Yeah, you get used to change, and I think you start realizing people are people. No matter where you are, there's going to be good, there's going to be bad, there's going to be odd, weird, normal, whatever. And people are people.
Yes. Yeah. And you really have a great appreciation for the uniqueness of people and the uniqueness of culture, I think.
Yeah.
It's I think it's a skill that I don't know. I think experience has to grow that in you.
Mm-hmm.
But then once you have those lens through which to view things, I think, Rick, I would agree. It makes us more readily adaptable or accepting of the world as it is becoming now. I mean, it really is a global environment. So there are some wonderful advantages to having all those experiences, I think.
Yeah, and Susan hasn't talked about this in a while, but she wants to go to Mars. So she wants to really get that community expanded.
Well,
I do
first
too.
of all, I'm
Let me
going to
know
have
when
to
you're
learn
going.
What, Susan?
First, I'm going to have to learn Martian.
Martian, yep. You know what? It's very similar to Klingon. So you should be okay.
But I do like the idea of really pushing oneself to experience something different, and then thinking about what it means to have the ideal community and how to create that. And I think that's one thing I find so interesting about Dayspring is that you're taking the situations that people are in say Oklahoma, and you're working with people who have a utopian idea or a vision of what they'd like to have for their lives, but then sometimes life or nature happen and their homes are destroyed by floods or tornadoes, or there's economic collapse, and I think that the programs that you have really help and address that.
Yes, I think we're working hard at developing services that recognize, and staff that recognize through training the trauma of, for example, one of my directors has a presentation that she does called The Traumatic Journey of Immigration. I think in many ways it's similar to the traumatic journey that so many children have in homes in which they experience abuse. So many people today are survivors of significant events that shape their lives forever. But when they connect with somebody that can provide understanding and walk with them a ways in that journey, they become more adept at identifying the strengths that they have within themselves and the resources that are around them to propel them further in life toward success. So I think we're working hard at designing services that walk with people through their journeys.
Well, one of the things that fascinated me a few weeks ago when we had lunch with Sean Allier, who's been a guest on the show, we were talking a lot about communities of recently arrived immigrants, and you mentioned that there are quite a few from Burma here in northeastern Oklahoma. Could you talk a little bit about who they are and what kind of services you provide?
Well, they're a refugee group, and the services that we provide are services that are alongside, say, a school district. The school district needs an assistance, say, in engaging these families, and so one of the things that we've worked hard at with Dayspring here in Oklahoma is developing a team of bilingual staff, of clinicians that can support organizations such as a school district in engaging the parents of these children so that their experience of the educational system is welcoming, it's rewarding, that they recognize that they have allies that are there to help them experience and fulfill the American dream. So I think it's a unique way that we work with our community. We're doing it with Tulsa Public Schools, Jenks Public Schools, and then also Bixby now. And it's going very well. It's amazing to me to see the development over, say, a span of 3 years. In your first year, for example, you'll have a smaller group of engaged people, say 30 to 50, and by the third year, oftentimes, you're having engagement groups of up to 300 people, and it's parents and their kids coming to these gatherings, and they are resilient in the sense that they've been through so much, and yet they have hope, and hope that their children can have a better life. And you know, it's kind of the American story, really, just in the present now, and I think oftentimes we probably lose touch with that, and so it's been wonderful to see that service develop over the last few years here in Tulsa. Did that answer the question, or did I carry on too much?
Yeah, that was great. And I think that by providing those sort of services to help the community and the individuals who have come here, for example, part of a service or program like United Nations, and they're relocated here, it not only helps the individuals, it helps the students in the school and the school itself so that they can maintain their standards. It also helps the families kind of move into being parts of the community instead of just outsiders. I have a question, and this is for Rick also. Okay, so it's probably, I know it's kind of controversial, and I'm prepared to be shot down by both of you, but what do you think about the idea of providing, well, okay, if I were Queen of the United States, I would provide low interest loans for business development for very, very entrepreneurial and enthusiastic documented immigrants. And I would give maybe not preferential treatment. Yeah, maybe I would go ahead and give preferential treatment because but what do you think about that?
Wait, go ahead. Oh, I was going to say that they've been doing that, but this is not government run, which is why it works so well. There are private organizations giving loans across the third world, especially in areas like Burma, India, just different places all around the world. They're very low interest, and an amazing result is going on. The companies are repaying the loans quickly. They're proud of the work that they've been doing, and they are taking it very responsibly. They said the default rate is less than 5%. That means 95% are working their buns off to make sure that they honor that loan, they pay it back, and they have something to show for it at the end. So the idea is in use right now, and it's working beautifully. But the key is they're not freebies. They're not handouts. There's something that makes them feel valuable and worthwhile for what they're doing.
Now, are these microloans or
These
are they bigger
no, some of them are
loans?
large. Some of them are pretty
Oh,
large.
wow.
And these are people who either own companies, want to start companies, and it's been very successful.
Well, Andrew, in terms of community development, do you see any business loans that are available for entrepreneurial immigrants or individuals? I mean, I guess they wouldn't have to be immigrants, but at least sometimes it requires a bridge.
You know, I can't really speak to that as far as the Tulsa community goes. I'm familiar with what Rick is referring to. I've done some reading, I've seen documentaries that cover some of this activity, but as far as the Tulsa community goes, I can't think of anything specific. I won't say that it's not occurring, though. I see some opportunity given as far as, say, scholarships for higher ed. So there are people in the Tulsa community working on certain areas in regard to our immigrant communities, in regard to loans or kind of offering a step in the ladder. But I'm not aware of significant activity as far as loans go for small business.
I guess a lot of it's really on the family level now.
I think when a community reaches a certain size, there's a lot of organic growth within those communities. I think the Hispanic community has a chamber of commerce in Tulsa, for example. So I think you see that happening internally in a culture, and I think that is good, and that's what we want to see, really. But I certainly think businesses could encourage this kind of development as well.
Now, Andrew, you said something that kind of struck something in me, and that is, in the old days, by hook or crook, starting back with the Italians and the Irish and everybody else in the early 1900s, they were forced in a certain way to mix in. Now we're creating silos between people, which I think is probably the worst thing we could do, because they're not acquiring the culture here, nor are the people here understanding the culture there. And so you have these siloed communities that don't feel like they belong here. On the other hand, they don't belong where they came from. So it's an interesting, how do you ever have to deal with that issue?
I think there is some of that. We kind of deal with the psychological side of things, Rick, and so I wouldn't say or disagree with you that is a side effect of communities, immigrant communities, and the growth of those communities.
Right.
But my experience and work with those communities is a little bit more on the individual level, oftentimes, and that's where my staff are working and addressing things on the familial level. Although, we are involved in some of the community groups and organizations. We're involved with, for example, the Coalition of Hispanic Organizations, and so we work with the Hispanic community in that capacity. Again, though, really to help them become engaged in the community at large. So I guess we work against that silo experience, but not that we see it, I guess, from a negative perspective. I think it's natural for a group to stay together for protective purposes, for survival purposes. So I think the way that you come at that situation, the way that you work with that situation, I think makes the difference as to whether it continues to be that kind of a closing in or a silo experience, or if it becomes a more common, accultured group of people. There's always the possibility that we all pull to our corners, no matter who we are, no matter what group we are. I think we see that, unfortunately, in a lot of the politics that are at play, and I think this year, as far as an election goes, has been very educational. These kinds of struggles play out in a lot of different ways.
One thing that I see here in Tulsa is I see that sure, there are communities or groups where there are, I guess, what you're talking about, Rick. There are a certain amount of silos and support groups of certain churches, etc., which is natural. At the same time, for example, the Mexican community, let's just give that as an example, they generate a great deal of business and prosperity and here in Tulsa by just simply consumption. I mean, just even that is an economic growth and just hard work, and then saving and investing. Lots of small businesses are here in Tulsa, and families come together. Now, I realize that there are a lot of controversies about, like, maybe how they're here or why, and sometimes I think that it's challenging to address those issues because they are really all about the economic inequality across, because of our different countries. So
yes, it's interesting though. A lot of foreigners who come here, whether they live here or not, they usually come from countries where their value, their currency, isn't worth much. So they don't save. They spend quickly because it could all disappear very quickly. And a lot of that comes with the same mentality. When you get a lot of Latins who come here, Latin America and Central America have been rather unstable for as far as anybody can remember. So they come here and they're very good consumers. They actually, in that respect,
but they save
help
too, though.
Yeah, they do to a point, but that's only to consume more. But it's
I
really
agree
interesting.
with you there, because I see that, like Miami, the banks are filled with people filled with savings and things where people have been looking for safe harbors. So because you're right about the unstable currency, but then their savings and they send back to their. In fact, I think that without family remittances, many of the small communities in other countries would have difficulty. And,
that's
in a certain
true.
way, we prop up bad governments because they don't have to do anything because they've got hardworking family members sending back family remittances.
Yep. Well, Susan, we've got 5 more minutes. Any other
sorry,
questions?
I'm really rambling on controversial topics.
Yep. We could spend hours on this one. Any other questions you have for Andrew at this point?
Well, yes, Andrew, I do. Andrew, so getting back to what you feel as core issues of Dayspring, what do you see as like a goal for the immediate future in Dayspring?
I think one of the struggles that we have truly in this state and in other states, and we're a division of a larger organization, Preferred Family Health, and it's a 5-state organization at this time. But I think one of the realities that we face here in our state, but in also in other states, is the ability to meet the needs and serve the members of our community. We don't have the capability to deal with the changing demographics. When, for example, you take a classroom in one of the largest school districts, and the majority of the kids, or 50% of the kids, are can speak a different language than the teacher is familiar with. The need is pretty clear, and that is that we have skill sets in our professionals that can address those needs. I think we have to be forward thinking if we are going to deal with the coming demographic changes that are occurring all around us as we speak. And I think many states are grappling with that, but they're behind the curve. And Oklahoma is, of course, one of those states. And so organizations in dealing with the demographic change are running as fast as they can. We are one of those organizations. I think we've seen a little bit ahead, or have moved forward in addressing those needs, but certainly we have to do more of that. Partnering with the universities so that we have an exchange with another university in another country, perhaps, so that we have the relatedness that's needed to bring us up to par to address the demographic change that, frankly, this whole nation is experiencing. 1 in 4 children born now will be of Hispanic origin in this country. So, and I think that's a gift, really, from our Hispanic communities. I think it's really a gift to our country, because it's forcing us at a local level, and I think it's going to force us at a national level to really become global minded. And that may be an oversimplification, that may be a little bit too much intellectual jargon to answer the question, but that's kind of what's on my heart and mind oftentimes during a week. How do we meet this wave and provide meaningful, caring, hope-giving services as a social service organization? So.
Oh, I love that answer. And I have one final question, and I'll ask it unless Rick would like to.
Oh, go ahead.
And that is, thinking of the name of our show, which is Life Edge, we like to ask the guests, what in life has given you an edge, helped you live life?
For me, I would say, of course, my roots, my spirituality. It leads me to believe that the role that we have, should we become leaders in our communities, is to offer hope, to offer kindness and compassion, because I think if we keep these things in mind, then we become a part of the building block of creating a better place for our children and their children. So I hope that doesn't sound too hokey to you, but that's what I've been reflecting on.
It's wonderful. It's very inspiring, Andrew, and especially when I think about your background and then how you've translated that into a message of hope and actual behaviors and programs. It's a bridge to a better world, definitely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So with that, we come to the end of the show. Andrew, pleasure meeting you and having you on, and good luck with everything you're doing. Susan, any final words?
Well, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Rick. Wonderful topics, and I apologize for being a little bit, controversial.
Everybody has to be controversial at certain points, right?
Yep.
I can't
right,
talk
well-
Thanks
myself.
for having me. Thank you,
Oh, our
Susan,
pleasure.
for-
Oh, thank you, Andrew.
A pleasure. And if you're watching the live stream on YouTube, please keep watching, subscribe, and you'll get notified every time we go live. If you're watching on Vimeo, subscribe again, become a member to the channel. This is www.vimeo.com/channels/LifeEdge. And we will see you next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye, Susan. Bye, Andrew. Thanks.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Great job, Andrew.